Okay, so you were a classically trained musician,
Yes.
and did you go to Berklee School of Music? Where did you go to
No,
school?
I went to Boston Conservatory of Music,
Got
which
it.
is now the Boston Conservatory at Berklee because they merged.
Right. So I saw a comment that you made that you were playing in a house band, or you were playing in a band that was playing at the Playboy Club.
Yeah, we had the band in the lounge for over a year, and after I left to go to LA, they continued on with a replacement for about another year.
And so how would that work? Like, what time would you guys show up for? Is it a shift, basically?
Yeah, it was something like, geez, I want to say 8 to 1, 9 to 1. Those were sort of typical 4 or 5 hour shifts. I don't remember. It was 1,000 years ago, back when
Yeah.
dinosaurs ruled the earth. So,
And what year was it? What was it around?
This would have been 70, 71.
Was that all you were doing? Were you making enough money just playing that gig, or?
Oh, yeah. Well, but I mean, I did other things too. I did a few little sessions, and basically if somebody would call me and ask me to play and sing and pay me money, I would do it,
Cool. And what kind of music were they asking you to play at the Playboy Club?
We were doing top 40.
Cool.
What would have been top 40. We did a lot in those days. We did a lot of Sergio Mendes type stuff because that was happening. Songs like Grazing in the Grass, You've Got Me Going in Circles, stuff. Also, too, both myself and Tony Abbott wrote, and we did some of our own songs, too.
And was the vibe kind of more of a lounge, or was it like a nightclub where people were dancing?
Oh, it was a lounge. It was a lounge.
So similar to like what you would see in a movie of like a jazz club kind of scene, or where people are just sort of sitting at the tables, drinking,
Yeah, exactly.
smoking?
They called it the living room, and it was
Okay.
set up to be very comfortable with couches and stuff, kind of like a living room. It was a listening room, though, not a dance room. It definitely.
Right. And you had to be a member to get into the club back then.
Yeah, you had to be key holder or a friend of a key holder, I think, could get you in, too.
And who were the clients? Was it like kind of like finance guys? Like who were the...
I don't know that I know that. They were a mixed bag, I would say.
Would they have to be pretty comfortable? Like would they have to be a little rich to be able to afford a
I
key
don't know
back
about
then?
rich, but they had to have disposable income, clearly. They're paying like a monthly thing, so they had to have disposable income.
And was it all about the chicks?
Probably.
Yeah.
Isn't it always?
It is pretty much, yeah.
It was also, though, it was kind of considered a hip place to go,
It was kind of like a Soho house of that
They
time.
gave you a dinner buffet in the lounge, and midnight, probably around 10 o'clock, they would take down the dinner buffet and put out a breakfast buffet. And one of the guys who would do it was Jay Leno.
Really?
Yeah, he would sit there by the, sitting up the buffet and looking at us and nodding and swinging to the music and giving us the thumbs up. Years later, when I saw him in LA, I reminded him of it. And he said, man, that was a long time ago. He clearly did not want to go back down that rabbit hole. So, yeah.
Well, there's a great interview, I'll text it to you after, that he did. And he talks about, he started doing comedy with two like 40-something-year-old strippers from the combat zone. And he said they were real like tough, like hardworking women. And that's just what they did for a job. So
Hey, my first gig, one of my first gigs was my first New Year's gig I was 16, and me and a drummer friend played for a stripper too. And my father, who was a drummer, actually they called him, and he said, well, my son could do it. And my mother was appalled. But my father said, no, really, it'll be good experience for him.
right.
And it was these real mafia guys. And I guess the first set we were a little loud. We were playing our own stuff, and then we would play for her. And the guy walks up to me, and he puts a hand on my shoulder and kind of digs in. Says, you guys were a little too loud that set. We're not going to have that problem anymore, are we? I said, no, sir, no, we're not.
So was the mob really part of the scene back then?
Oh, yeah, in Boston?
Yeah.
And it's still, I bet it is. It was
And
always
it was all Italian mafia.
Oh, it was a mob town, yeah. In fact, right next to the Playboy Club, there was a little divey bar. I think some guy, Al, with some Italian name, owned it. And he also owned a place in Revere, which was the first gig we did before we did the Playboy Club as a band. And he would call halfway through the night and have the bartender hold up the phone to make sure we were playing when we were supposed to. And at the end of the 2 weeks, he said, I'm only paying you guys for 1 week. You weren't worth it. And I was wanted to make a stink about it, but our drummer was an Italian guy who knew this guy and knew he was connected, and he said, no, you don't want to fuck with this guy. Let's use this as having been a paid rehearsal since we were already booked to go into the Playboy Club. And I remember we went outside on a break, and he was standing outside, and he looks at us, and it's clear he doesn't remember us, but he remembers he doesn't like us, and gave us a look. We just went back inside.
So the vibe inside the club, and I'm talking about the Playboy Club then, it was like, were people wearing jackets and suits? What was kind of the style of it?
Leisure suits and Apache scarves. That was the era when all that stuff was in style. I mean, you look back at it now, we look pretty funny. But some people were in suits, I would say, and some people were dressed more casually. But everybody was dressed nicely. You couldn't come in with shorts or flip-flops or anything like that. You were expected at a minimum to wear a really nice shirt with nice slacks, at a minimum.
And do you like that style that people used to really dress and sort of like put that in, or do you like it now where it's more casual and everything's like?
Well, I actually kind of liked it then. You know, of course, when I moved to LA, I was shocked at just how casual everybody was, because in those days, Boston was pretty, a little straighter than LA. LA, nobody, dressed up for anything.
Right. And the clientele that were coming there, were they almost all white, or?
Yeah, there was some blacks, but yeah, mostly white.
And what about
most of my fellow musicians who came in to see us and stuff.
Right. And what about like in the kitchen, the kitchen staff, the busing staff, the waiters?
I have to be honest, I don't remember. It was a long time ago.
No, I'm curious because now it's mostly like a lot of Latino people work in the kitchens and stuff. I didn't know back then what the dynamic was.
I honestly don't remember. I do remember that the bunnies, there were a couple black bunnies.
Okay.
I don't remember any Latinas, but that doesn't mean there weren't, but I don't remember it.
And do you know if the girls could make good money doing it?
Yeah, I mean, there were waitresses in costumes, and if they were, like all waitresses, if they were smart and good with the customers, I'm sure they got tips.
Yeah.
They weren't, as far as I know, doing extracurricular activity. They'd have been fired if that happened.
Okay, so it was kind of pretty strict.
Yeah, they weren't hookers. They were waitresses,
Was there like a sex vibe there? Were there women there that worked as escorts? Or?
There was nothing sexy particularly about it. It was like if you went to Bachelor's 3 a few doors down, which one of the Patriots owned, that was a shoot off from Joe Namath's club in New York. If you went there, it was pretty much the same vibe. I mean, no, there was nothing sexual about this place.
So even though like Playboy is the bigger brand was kind of about sex, like the clubs were more about just the clubs themselves.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they were trying to play on that cachet, but there was nothing about it. I will tell you, when I first came out here, I ended up at the Playboy Mansion because I was invited to be an accompanist for Barbie Benton, Hugh's girlfriend. And there was nothing all that sexual about that. I mean, I was told stuff went on in the grotto, but, when I was on the grounds and everything like that, Peter Lawford and some famous people were hanging out at the pool, and you saw a lot of pretty girls, but there was nothing overtly sexual about that either. A couple of girls were topless, but, I mean, it was, I swear, I think a lot of that stuff was more the image than it was anything in reality.
Yeah. And so like in 70, 71 in Boston, in the Playboy Club, was there at all like a drug scene? Like was pot popular or cocaine or anything?
Nope, not then.
And in the city at large?
Nope, not then. At least not that I was part of.
Okay.
But you're also talking to probably the only 70-year-old musician you'll ever talk to who hasn't even tried pot. My parents have tried it and I haven't, so that's how straight I am.
Okay. And what about neighborhoods? Like what was the neighborhood what was the hottest club in the city? And then what was the neighborhood you never wanted to go to?
The hottest club in the city? Geez, there were so many. Bunratty's was a happening place. Oh, God. What was the name of the one in Kenmore Square that had black show bands? Oh, God. Rosemary? What was the name of the club you used to go to dance to the soul bands? Lucifer's, right? Lucifer's was a hot place. Like I said, Bunratty's, Brandy's, where I played as a single. There were two Brandy's and Brandy's 2 were hot places. What was that other place in Kenmore Square? There was like 3 clubs in one venue. I think Lucifer's was one, and there were a couple others. If you like jazz, there was the Jazz Workshop. There was a place called Benjamin's that I played at. It was kind of hot. But there were a ton of them. There were so many music venues then. So much music. And I don't know in Boston, but there's almost none in LA anymore. And I'm sure that's true in Boston.
Same, yeah. Yeah, that's been part of the problem is people feel like kind of the identity and the localized flavor of the city is being washed out. And
Yeah.
That's what the whole project that I'm working on is to do. It's to really catalog, what the city was like, what those places were, what the identity of the city was.
Yeah. There's also a nightclub where they had big name people like Sammy Davis Jr., people like that, called Blindstrom's. You probably heard.
Blindstrom's in the South End.
Yeah, Blindstrom's was that's where you got big name people. And there was one in Revere where I played with Bo Diddley. I think it was called the Beach Ball.
Okay.
And of course, in the summer, there was at Nantasket Park, Nantasket Beach, there was the Surf, where you get Dick Clark's Traveling Rock and Roll Show, where I saw Gene Pitney and Luke Christie and the DeVells and people like that, the Crystals, great stuff,
And so you were gone before the places like the Rat and Spit and all those like kind of punk clubs popped up in the 80s.
Yeah. There was also too. Was it the Rat Skeller where Barry and the Remains played?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So you know what you might like? I'll send you a link after this, but on the website I have all these old T-shirts. So we did all the old radio stations from Boston.
Oh, I saw the discussion about Arnie Woo Woo Ginsburg.
Yeah.
You remember Hop? You go and you would Bergen, you get a free top 40 record. There would be several to choose from that were hits.
Yeah.
On RKO and
WMEX was Woo Woo Ginsburg.
Yep.
And
I could still sing the whole theme song. I used to listen to Arnie religiously.
So please pick a few of those shirts, and I'll just send them to you for free on me.
Oh, thank you, Jason. It's very
nice. Any you like in there.
That's very cool. And you live in Somerville. I had an apartment in Somerville. It's so funny. It was like a 2-story. It was a triple-decker, actually. And when we pull into the parking lot in the morning, we'd have to juxtapose the cars if somebody left for work earlier than the other. And the floors were actually slanted. And in the middle of the night, the heat would go off, and I had to go in the cellar, and there was a knob I had to turn to get the heat to go back on. But, I think it was off Davis Square, was it?
Yeah. Well, Davis Square is the happening place now.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
It's very expensive to live in Davis.
Yeah. My rent was $150 a month that I split with my roommate.
It's incredible. There are condos right on the edge of Davis Square right now on Highland Ave. A 2-bedroom is about $800,000.
Yeah, boy, the whole thing's got gentrified, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, it's the way of the world these days.
Well, I was shocked. I'm from Winthrop originally.
And really?
Yeah.
The person, my partner in this project, her name is Alex Montone. She lives in Winthrop, or she grew up in Winthrop.
I grew up in Winthrop, and we lived in a couple places. The last house we lived on from the time I was in junior high on was on Palmyra Street. And, my parents were middle class. I'll bet you they paid like, $16,000 for it. I see now on, what's the thing that tells you the prices of the homes? I forget the name of the website.
Zillow or Trulia.
Zillow, right.
Yep.
It would go for over $600,000. When I told my parents that, who live in Florida now, they were just shocked that house. They said, but it was an old house. It was a 100-year-old house.
Yeah.
That it would go for that kind of money in Winthrop, because Winthrop wasn't Swampscott or Marblehead. All the Jews who made a lot of money moved from Winthrop to Swampscott or Marblehead.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was going to ask you. What was it like being Jewish in Boston at that time? Was there any kind of sense of that?
I sang in a band with some guys from East Boston. And if I walked into East Boston wearing a Winthrop jacket, if my friends in the band didn't meet me right at Orient Heights after I got off, I was going to get jumped and get my ass kicked. I wasn't going to get shot. I
Right.
wasn't going to get stabbed. I probably would have got roughed up a little bit, you
Yeah.
know? And, you know, in Winthrop itself, there was this one guy, real tough guy named Johnny Familari. He was like Fonz, but not nice like Fonz.
Right.
And, you know, I walked by him one day and he went, "Jew boy?" And I kept walking because he put a guy in a hospital the year before.
Yeah.
So, but on the other hand, it wasn't like it was constant harassment for being Jewish. You know, there was the Jewish part of Winthrop, there was the Italian part, there was the Irish part. And on the wall, the beach wall, if you know the beach wall in Winthrop, there were different parts of the wall where the different ethnic groups hung out. But something changed around 1963, 64. And all of a sudden, people started hanging out together at different parts of the wall. It's like that segregation of the wall all of a sudden went away. And some of the Jewish kids who never would have dated non-Jewish girls started to, and vice versa. Something really changed right around the time after the Beatles hit. I don't know whether it was Kennedy getting shot or the Beatles or just something changed, though. I mean, really noticeably.
And do you think that Boston's reputation as a kind of a racist city is earned?
Oh, absolutely. All you had to do was see the videos of Louise Day Hicks and those idiots throwing. I mean, there was problems with busing. It was forced on people. And, you know, I understand why they didn't like it. But, yeah, Bill Russell, you know, for years didn't want anything to do with Boston because they would, when he'd play, they'd say, you know, "You're not hustling, you nigger," or things like that to him, you know, and his home got damaged and stuff like that. So in those days, I would say Boston was a weird mixture of being very liberal in some ways, but there was a lot of racism in Boston.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bill Russell had a restaurant called Slade's.
Uh-huh.
Remember that? Slade's Barbecue?
That's after I think I left, unless I just didn't know about it. You know, was it in Roxbury or someplace like that?
I don't remember where it was, but there's a famous picture of him and Ali standing outside of it.
Oh, cool.
You know, the awning above them.
Slade. There was a great jazz joint in Roxbury where it was safe to go called Estelle's that I went to. There was also a great place called Lenny's on the Turnpike. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was obviously on the Turnpike.
Sorry, Estelle's was in Roxbury, you said?
Huh? Estelle's was in Roxbury, yeah.
And where was Lenny's?
Somewhere out on off the Route 1 on the Turnpike. I don't remember specifically.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. Well, I mean, that kind of covers it for right now. But if you like, I mean, I'll keep you updated. And then if there's some stuff, I can always come back and ask you
sure
specific places. Or if you think of any great places, please let me know.
Sure. It seems like there's something else I wanted to tell you, and I don't remember.
Okay. Well, let's see. We covered the Playboy Club. Interesting that it sounds like the mob was running most of the nightclubs then.
Yeah, I think a lot of it.
Okay.
Yeah, Boston was a mob town. It really was. You know?
Yeah.
Once it's not like you had problems with them. You know, one of the famous guys who blew the whistle on the mob years ago said, if you didn't, you know, do business with us and try to do something we didn't like, you had nothing to worry about from us. But I'm sure a lot of people were, you know, getting paid for their liquor licenses and to keep things copacetic. I'm sure your research is telling you that.
Yeah. No, it's even today with construction and stuff, there's always an element of, you know, certain people have to be taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah. Boston was always that town. You know, it was a strong union town as well, you know, in those days.
Right. And it's very insulated. It's not an easy town to break into. Sort of have to have some kind of network within it.
Yeah, I remember I wanted to do jingles and stuff, and there was a guy named Tony Texera who had his thumb on that. You weren't going to play in a jingle, you know, if you didn't work with Tony Texera.
Oh, did you ever get interested in any of the comedy scene back then? Was there much of a stand-up scene?
I remember an improv group that was kind of like a Second City thing that I went to see a couple of times, but there weren't the kind of comedy clubs that, you know, I didn't start going to comedy clubs really until I came to LA.
Right, and it didn't really start to happen in a big way until like the late 70s, 80s, I think.
Yeah, I was long gone by then.
Okay, great.
Yeah, we
Well,
have the Comedy Store out here on Sunset Strip. That was a big deal.
which is an incredible place. It really is.
Yeah, it was. It was an incredible place.
No, the Comedy Store to this day, they have some of the top stand-ups in the country.
Yeah, yeah.
Every time I go to LA, I go.
We went to see Richard Pryor there.
Yeah.
And it was amazing because he would use it as a workshop. He would start talking about things that were being done to black people that were bad things, but he would say it in a humorous way, and you would be laughing, and he'd go, and that's not funny. And everyone would go like, and then he'd start again, he'd get you laughing and laughing, and that's not funny. You could tell he was working on how far can I push this, white people, and still have it be funny. It was amazing.
Well, that's incredible that you got to see him.
Oh, amazing.
He's one of the best ever.
Absolutely. All right, good luck, Jason.
Okay. Thank you, Jay.